Very good afternoon to you. Thanks very much for being with us. It's not really quite the same as the suffragettes or the anti-apartheid movement, is it?
I think Ed said that the causes are different, and he said that in his speech. But first of all, can I just pick up on the initial point, which is that it was an enormous demonstration of hundreds of thousands of people, angry but well-mannered and good-humoured, policed by a police force who were trying their best under enormous pressure because of the actions of a tiny minority of violent, parasitic, unrepresentative hooligans who are trying to destroy really everything that the message is about yesterday,
Sure.
which is a different way of doing this.
But because of that, and it wasn't unexpected that those people would turn up, was it kind of a risk for Ed Miliband to associate himself so closely with it?
You can't get to a point where a prominent politician, the leader of the Labour Party, isn't able to go on a demonstration against government cuts. Now, what I thought was really quite striking about what Ed said is that in the middle of his speech to those tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people in the park, he said he acknowledged there was a need for tough choices and some cuts. And it seems that on the one hand you've got the government who are saying that all of these cuts are necessary, and the other you have a minority of demonstrators who say none of the cuts are necessary, whereas Ed stood there and told the truth. There's a need for tough choices and there will be a need for some cuts.
And just going back to this thing of invoking the civil rights movement and all the rest of it, wasn't that a bit odd, really? I mean, I know he said they were different causes, but this is a routine argument between a government and an opposition, the speed with which you try to tackle the deficit or not.
Well, Ed said, as I already alluded to, there are different causes at different times, but the size of the demonstration yesterday was enormous, and it was a reflection of the comparison of scale. And I don't think the government should change its mind on its policy just because of one big demonstration, regardless how impressive and phenomenally energetic it was. They should change their mind not because of one demonstration, they should change their mind because their policy is wrong. OK, can I just come on to the subject as Shadow Defence Secretary of Libya?
Our role in Libya, according to the UN Mandate 1973, is to protect the civilian population. Does that include the rebels?
It does absolutely include protecting civilian populations and those who are trying to defend those civilian populations. So Gaddafi, of course, as we know, was carrying out barbaric slaughter, and it was right that the United Nations, with the UK playing a leading role. And while I'm critical of the government in many other ways, I think the Labour Party has been really clear about this. David Cameron did a good job in getting that UN resolution, and our government was right to act in the way that it has done.
But there is a difference between, say, providing help for the civilians, and they then say using your Tornado ground attack aircraft to provide close air cover for the rebels as they make their advances.
That's not what's happening on the ground or from the air. Now,
neither
you or I are going to design an alternative military strategy this afternoon on the TV screen, because that's best left to commanders on the ground. But the UN mandate is absolutely clear. If Gaddafi's forces are threatening civilian populations,
but it is what's happening in
Ojdarbia.
That's exactly what has been happening. You've taken out tank columns, and the rebels have advanced in the immediate aftermath of the attacks by the Allied aircraft.
It's pretty clear that if tank columns are gathering around population centres, they're not there for a benevolent purpose. They're there to wreak havoc and cause mass slaughter. So it's right that the UN mandate enables the forces of NATO, the UK, and others to act against those tanks and pieces of heavy artillery. We want to get to a point where Gaddafi is no longer able to terrorise his population, but that won't in itself be enough. There has to be a parallel process of diplomatic effort, every much as powerful and as energetic as the military campaign that we're now seeing.
Do the Syrian people who are rising up against Bashar al-Assad deserve the same protection?
The people of Egypt, the people of Tunisia, the people of Syria, the people of Iran, the people of that North African, Middle Eastern region are all entitled to the types of things that we take for granted, basic human rights. Now, what Gaddafi was doing was of such a different scale and nature that the UN had to act. But the UN will not be silent, I'm certain, on what's happening in Syria.
But if it turned out that the uprising was being used with the same degree of brutal repression, then you would support UN action, another military action against Syria?
Well, no two circumstances are the same. We all know that. But the fact is that because of what Gaddafi was doing, it meant that we had to act as the United Kingdom. And just because we can't do everything everywhere at all times doesn't mean we should do nothing anytime ever. And that's why it's right that what's happening against Gaddafi is taking place. But it's also clear, as we watch this unfold, is that the government, at some point in the future, will have to look again at its approach to defence strategy. because we cannot afford this year's level of foreign policy ambition on next year's spending profile on defence. And I think once this passes, we do have to look afresh at a defence review.
OK, Jim Murphy, thanks ever so much for being with us. Good to talk to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.